Uh, Thank you. Carol actually reached out to Krista Thorpe, who she knows served on the Bristol Broadband Committee, to get some advice from her. And I believe that the biggest advice was to form a town committee. So being an organizer as she was, Carol recruited some others. And if you want to go to the next slide. In October, the group started to work together, and we started meeting about every other week and figuring what we needed to do, who we needed to bring into the discussion. And ultimately, it ended up into a proposal to the Newcastle Select Board of making this working group actually as a town committee. The select board at the time approved and appointed the committee and endorsed what you see there on the bottom of the screen in bold letters, the vision of the committee to bring reliable, affordable, future-proof, high-speed internet access to everyone, every home in Newcastle. So we've been working on that vision ever since. So the first order of business after that was, and the town also, the select board authorized us to pursue a planning grant under the town's name. And we did pursue that. And fortunately enough, we were granted a planning grant of $5,000 to kick us off. The major project after that was there were two. We were going to survey the infrastructure and survey our residents. The first thing that I have listed here on the thing was the infrastructure survey. And we've had members that actually went out and walked the streets and look up at the lines and determine what infrastructure was where. And to aid us in doing that, Tidewater LCI made a presentation to us one evening, and hopefully the PowerPoint that they had will go up in the chat here sometime, so you could see what we saw that evening to help us identify where there was fiber particularly. And as Alan cautioned back then, I'll repeat it now: if you do look at that PowerPoint, don't be driving the streets looking up, watching to see if it has a horseshoe or not. Pay attention to the road unless you're walking. So we did that. The town, I don't have the map there. We sliced the town of Newcastle into 4 quadrants, and then various people on the committee, let's see, George, Christopher, Tim, and Tom went out and saw what they could see and count who they thought were not served, which was great. So we could compare that to information that we received from Connect Maine and from various providers. So the next big step was the survey that we did of our residents, and you have a copy of that. That was one of the handouts here that we thought we would share with you tonight, so that you saw exactly what we were asking and how we asked it. So we mailed the survey using grant funds out to 1,100 addresses, and we had a total of 250 respondents, which was great. And 21% actually is by my count. And out of that response, I just pulled a couple of the questions and answers out that I think are important for us to look at. So the big one: do you support Newcastle Broadband Committee's effort to make future-proof, high-speed internet accessible to all Newcastle residents? A resounding yes. Obviously, some folks didn't answer that, but nobody said no. That is telling. The next one: do you or someone in your family use a computer to work from home? telecommute, run a business, do work for your job, or do nonprofit volunteer work. Here again, 152 said yes, 97 no, a large majority there. And then on the next one, similarly, we were trying to capture who in the homes would be using high-speed internet. And this one was asking about homework and education. And out of our respondents, 27 of them said they have pre-K through 8 students doing work. And then for high school, there were 16, 6 college students, 30 adult learners there. And then 89 of the responses said that they do not have, where they weren't using it for education. Then we asked, were they interested in learning about additional topics related to high speed? And the top one was townwide access to future-proof high speed. 89 respondents there. Affordability, obviously a big concern, 80 respondents. And then for education, 35. So we started certainly to see trends for what people were interested in the town of Newcastle. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, so before we turn it over to Evan to talk about how the two committees came together and what we've been doing, I will just point out in your materials that you see is actually a summation of the results, more in bar graphs.
I've got the Damariscotta ones and the Newcastle ones separate, so that one you're
okay.
your
This
hand is a
one,
Damariscotta one.
So there should be in that file somewhere, maybe.
Fine.
So just to review it on your own time, but before I hand it over, I want to tell you how recently broadband, high speed, and telemedicine has made a difference in somebody's life. So last week we get up and my 17-year-old wasn't feeling very well. So we said, okay, you stay home. His mother went to Lincoln Academy. I went to work. She called the doctor to schedule an appointment, figuring one of us had to go pick him up and take him over there, sit in the waiting room, get him served, and then out again. Well, they said, well, how about a telemedicine visit? And we thought, great. So we called him up, told him where to sign in, and he met the PA by telemedicine. And we got a call later saying what to get him for medicine, but neither one of us had to leave work to do that. And I thought, what a benefit for our local community that neither one of us had to leave our jobs to get him over there and then travel, wait, and then get back to work without being too stressed. So to me, there is a success there, and that's some of the possibilities going forward of having high-speed internet throughout the communities. So Evan, do you want to take it from
Yep.
here?
So we'll start off with the Damariscotta timeline of how this town has progressed. In June 2021, LCI gave a presentation to the Damariscotta Board of Selectmen on near and long-term goals for the expansion of their fiber network in town. And also in June myself, I began an internship with Matt Lutkus, and part of the internship was to choose a project to focus on and give a presentation to the board and town. Broadband obviously became the focus of that project, and that continues today. In July, using maps provided by LCI and Charter Spectrum, I made an attempt to identify all of the E91 addresses of the unserved premises in Damariscotta. In the end, this small effort identified roughly 85% of the unserved premises in town, which was later figured more precisely. Also in July, a Nissen Farm Lane resident made the first request as to whether the town's new ARPA funds could be used to expand broadband. For your information, Nissen Farm Lane is a dead-end road currently with 8 homes and several more buildable lots, all of which are currently unserved. Between July and August, we had conversations with Chris Hall, the Bristol town manager, Krista Thorpe at the Island Institute, Mary Ellen, who's in the meeting tonight, and of course, the Newcastle Broadband Committee to look at options to do cooperative work. In August, both towns agreed to contribute $2,450 per town toward a grant from the Maine Community Foundation to be used for a feasibility study. This grant was later awarded to the towns, and the top end results will be presented tonight by LCI. September, the Damariscotta Broadband Committee was formally created, and myself, I was retained to continue working on the project using funds from Newcastle's previously awarded planning grant from Connect Maine, and both committees began meeting as a joint group. Damariscotta also released their own survey, which we have copies of here tonight. I gave all the Damariscotta folks one. We'll also have that later online to review. November, the joint committee sent requests for information to all the incumbent broadband providers, as well as several other active fiber companies throughout the state to gauge any interest in expanding services in the communities and the level of service provided as such. December, conference calls were held between the committees and representatives from both LCI and Charter Spectrum to answer any questions they had about the request that was sent out. Sorry about that. And later that, another week or so, Charters informed us they were withdrawing from consideration toward the committee's goal of submitting a Connect Maine infrastructure grant. We also received responses to the RFI from both LCI and Tidewater, or excuse me, LCI and Axiom. Axiom is a fiber company engaged in working with towns primarily to create municipally owned networks. Over the holiday season, the committee met with Mark Willett, president and CEO of Axiom, to discuss how a municipally owned structure would work. This meeting generated a lot of info and questions, and a subsequent meeting was held to discuss and debate the merits of a municipally owned network. And in January, the committee voted to continue working with LCI toward a goal of universal fiber access within the two towns. And just this past week, we completed the Damariscotta survey, which I've also pulled out some of the highlights similar to what David highlighted. Out of all of the responses, we did not mail it. We just had it shared on social media, had flyers handed out door to door, and had it posted at several public areas. We had 94 responses. In this graphic, you can see the amount of people that said they do not have internet service. 9 said no. And we further asked, if you don't have service, why is that? And 4 responded it was too expensive, and 5, it was not available at all. We then asked, does anyone in your household use the internet to work from home? And we had over 55% people that responded say that someone in the house works from home. We later asked how many of those people that work from home work full-time versus part-time, and you can see there there's about 60% part-time versus 40% full-time out of the folks that work from home. And then this one is critical. Would you or anyone in your household work from home or work more often from home with better internet speeds? And we had over 40% of the respondents say they would work more from home if they had better speeds. We also asked same question, are there any students in your household? And we had about, I believe it's 25 to 30% of respondents say they had a student in the home. And of those, about 44% said that they were their student was negatively impacted during the pandemic because of their internet speeds at home. And we also had the, do you support the Damariscotta Broadband Committee's effort to make future-proof high-speed internet accessible to all Damariscotta residents? We had 90 yeses and 3 no's, and I'll have you know, one of those no's was from South Bristol, so we'll forget that that person even responded. They can keep their negativity down on the peninsula. That concludes the highlights that I pulled up. If we'd like to turn the floor over to Alan now, and he can provide Tidewater's presentation.
Sure. Can I set the table? It'd be easier for me to drive. Okay. Thanks. Up. Oh my stuff. Let me see if I can. So can I share? Okay. Like to share.
While he's setting up, can somebody tell me what future-proof means?
Good question. Excellent.
It means that you're not going to be changing every year the quality or upgrading. Or
We haven't found, there hasn't been to my knowledge, an end date found yet. We're looking at 50+ years of fiber optic cables being used without being replaced in some places.
Yeah, typically that word future-proof, in a lot of places, that's code for fiber, actually, because it's become that kind of the standard for that. There are other things that can supply really high-speed broadband as well. This is one that seems to be one of the most reliable in terms of industry standards. So and I think they're also trying to say future-proof, meaning that if you're building enough bandwidth that you can build in, that you can get a gigabit to every location. That's looking to the future. So I think that's part of what people are saying about the big enough pipe. All right, ready for me?
Yep.
All right, thank you. I think I'm ready to drive this thing. Thank you for having me and allowing me to come tonight. So what I wanted to do was kind of, the timing is great. I'm building right on the timetables that both David and Evan laid out. This is where we're coming in now and kind of showing the results of the study that was done, and also kind of talking about what our plan that was submitted, that we submitted with our RFI, the request for proposal that was put out, that both Tidewater, LCI responded to, and so did Axiom. So that's kind of what I'd like to start with, if that's okay, is to start off the presentation with, here's what we were proposing. So we responded to the RFI in December, and our plan, and what the RFI asked for, gets back to some of that future-proof stuff that you were asking about, are these things. These were some of the objectives. One, that whatever you do, it has to be we're looking for 100% fiber to the home, okay, for every project. And when we're talking about 100% fiber to the home, we're talking about 100% fiber to the home accessibility for every address in both of these towns. So that's an initial thing, okay? So that's one of the requirements. The next one is that it has to be the ones that we were proposing rather, is a 10 gig GPON and active E fiber optic network. So that would be plenty of bandwidth so that we could supply everyone in both towns, and we can meet that minimum need that you're going to see in a minute, and also the 1 gig ongoing capacity. So that's the next thing. So we talked about everybody's going to get it. We're going to have 10 gig, but what's it going to do? What's the minimum build standard, as we say? The minimum build standard is that every address that can access this fiber will be able to, at a minimum, get 100 by 100 megabits service levels at each location. That's 100 megabits download and 100 megabits per second upload, okay? And within that same network, every subscriber will have access to 1 gigabit throughout the entire network. Now, they're not going to use a gig at the same time. They could, I suppose. That would be difficult to do, but we could manage that network too with the kind that we're planning to build, okay? So that's, once again, getting to that issue of minimum, that 100 by 100 is a minimum, but a gig capacity.
Could you elaborate a little bit on the 1 gig capacity? What's the context there?
What's the context?
Right. In other words, how many people who could all be running at 100 in one direction?
Mm-hmm.
How do they fit into that 1 gig?
Right.
And sort of the backhaul question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and once again, we're being supplying about a 10 gig kind of feed for the entire area, so that the ideas are that at any one time, that 10 gig would never be used up, even if everyone was accessing, and it'd be monitored and managed in a way so that the network itself would regulate itself. It's not going to regulate people. You're still going to get to use all you want, but it's going to regulate the kind of the system and how it's feeding it up. So not everybody, even if you're trying to use it, you're using that access at a point in time. You're not using it all the time. You're using it for seconds at a time. It's half a second at a time, microseconds, and then somebody else is using part of it as well.
So if you look forward in time,
Mm-hmm.
you can have potential users that could be pretty intensive, things that don't exist at the moment.
Right.
Future proofing this. How do you deal with very substantial increases? You're making the promise at a certain level.
Yep.
But what what happens if you have very intensive users develop who want to push just a lot of data or pull a lot of data?
Yeah, and it's true that we don't quite know what's going to happen. You know, I can't say that with 100% certainty. I do know with 100% certainty, if you build a network like this, the only thing that's, once you've got the fiber in place, and the basic network in place, the only thing that limits it are the electronics at either end. So that's certainly what we can do. Once you have that basic infrastructure in place, if it gets to the point that a 10 gig GPON active system does not cover that, so everybody can get what they need at all the time, then we'll have to take efforts to say, great, let's talk about the electronics at either end. On our end, at the head end, the central office as we're pushing it out, and then what those customers are going to be able to use at the other end too, the ONT, the optical network terminal that they have at their end. So we're pretty confident that this is going to last quite a long time. It's going to meet the needs for some time to come. So, but you're right. We couldn't have predicted that. I mean, just 10 years ago, somebody would have said, you're going to need 100 megabits. We're like, what are you doing? Launching missiles over there? How could we couldn't possibly use that? But you do. So we're aware of that. I'm going to take that into consideration. So that's, sure. I'm sorry, say again. That just stands for Gigabit Passive Optical Network. And what that is, and the other one is a part of it is we're going to be using two parts, and one of those is an active Ethernet network. The difference being GPON can be pushed through splitters. So you go through a splitter cabinet and divide that light wave into more, so it can serve more. The active E is each individual fiber is going directly back to a central office. Yeah, so it'll be a mixture of those, but always with the balance being in mind, of the engineering balance in mind, so that everyone can have all that they need all the time. One of the things we hope to do, not only with this community, with everything that we do, and I know Randall Manning, our Vice President of Operations and Engineering, is somewhere in the Zoom out there. One of the things that we're really interested in doing with every community that we're working with is moving to that point where we have enough bandwidth that we want to get beyond just the speed issue, where everyone's worried about how much speed do I have. We want to get to that issue of the experience, so that everyone's getting the experience that they need for whatever they need. So it's kind of an open access network where you can get what you need in terms of bandwidth. So that's kind of the next step, but this should cover that. We looked at this project then when we filled out the forms and submitted all the documentation for the RFI. We looked at it in two phases. Phase one, with the initial priority of really getting those unserved areas, those ones that you saw that were identified. There are 103 unserved addresses in Damariscotta and 99 unserved addresses in Newcastle. And so unserved in this case, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go along, unserved means, in this case, it is kind of using the Connect Main Authority definition of unserved for right now, which is they receive less than 50 megabits by 10, 50 megabits down and 10 up. If you're 50 by 10, you're under that, you're unserved. So typically what that means in the Newcastle and Damariscotta area, those are people who don't have either fiber in front of them, or they don't have coax cable in front of them, and they can only get their internet through one of our phone lines. And the best they can do is through DSL, which does not meet that 50 by 10 threshold. Those are those 200 people, those 200 addresses right there that we're talking about. Those are the ones we want to prioritize first and get fiber out to them first. So in this way of doing that, it would be to concentrate on applying for a Connect Main grant for those unserved in this existing round, which is right now, it's happening right now, spring of 2022. The second phase then is to really look at the bigger part of it. I mean, remember, just what the title of the slide says, 100% fiber to the home. Okay, that's what this is about. Even if we get those priority ones done and get unserved, all those unserved addresses fiber to the home, and we already have some fiber to lots of homes, there's still going to be a group that doesn't have fiber optic network access in front of them. Those are the ones that currently now are served by a cable company, by Spectrum, throughout both of your towns. And so the second phase will be developing funding and business model strategies with the towns for Tidewater to build out the remaining fiber optic network to all underserved areas. And one of the terms we use when we talk about this is called cable overbuild, to be able to overbuild where that cable is, putting fiber there too, so that that fiber is in front of every home, every address throughout the towns. So that was kind of our response. That was what the RFI, the towns said they wanted. That's what we responded to. We gave some basic information about how we would do that, our network, our background, our engineers. So we sent all of the, it was an extensive RFI. Thank you very much, Evan. Spent most of my late December before Christmas getting that done. And it was good. And we're glad to do that. And it made us really think through the process, which was good for us. So this is what I came up with. So now I'm going to show you the results. This is part of this study. And also, you paid for this study. Both towns put in whatever that was, $2,400. We matched both of that too. Basically, I think that the total cost for the study was $9,500. I think something like that. I can't remember the exact number. So we put in half. Newcastle put in 25%. Damariscotta put in 25%. And this is with Casco Bay Consulting, who did the study. Brian Lippold, and also he used Vetro mapping as one of his subcontractors to help with that material. The map you're seeing in front of you right now is the map of Damariscotta. And you're going to get used to, I want you to get used to these colors because you'll see them. They're used all throughout the proposal. So the yellow is where we have Tidewater fiber and cable. So anywhere where there's yellow on there, that's under that yellow means that they have access to fiber, but also they can get cable internet service as well from Spectrum. The orange lines, there are not many of them. There are some up here and a few out here, one over here. Those are ones that are just Tidewater fiber. There's no cable. That is to say, we built fiber out there, but there is no cable on that particular road. Okay. The blue, as you can see, all the blue, that is where there's cable and no fiber. Okay. So that's where you're going to see those folks would have access to cable television and access to cable broadband through the Spectrum. Oops, sorry. But they wouldn't have access to the higher speed that you can get from fiber. And finally, the green ones, those are what we're calling the unserved. So where you see the greens, those are the unserved ones, meaning those are the ones that can't get greater than 50 by 10. They're primarily only their best access on those roads for those households is through DSL. So that's going to, and then we talk about the priority, phase one priority, though in Damariscotta, those address, what was it, 103, right? There are 103 households, those would be the priority, okay? So remember those colors. We'll go back over them. So here's Newcastle. Same thing, same color coding, except we've added one more thing in that I've got to show you. I want to show you this first. You'll notice on our key, we have a red line, and there's a red box at the bottom of Newcastle. There is a part of Newcastle that is outside of our telephone company service area. We're an incumbent local exchange carrier, so it's outside of our exchange. And that area right there is provided telephone service by Consolidated, the CCI, Consolidated Communications, okay? We point that out because when we get into all the complicated funding models for this, it's more costly for us to build fiber in that little bitty box than it is for the rest of the areas because we don't own the poles there, there's make-ready costs, all those kinds of things. So I just point that out. When you look at the model, you'll see why. So once again, yellow, that's where we have fiber and cable already throughout Newcastle. That little few of those little orange lines, that's where we just have fiber, where we were there, but there is no cable on those lines. And then the blue, of course, that's where Spectrum is, where you can get cable access to broadband through Spectrum. The green then are those areas that are unserved, currently unserved. In other words, they can't get above 50 by 10. And in most cases, quite a bit less than that. Those are the ones we want to focus on. So once again, that's when we did the mapping, we laid that all out. Then we take the addresses and we can overlay them on these so we can see where they all are. That's how we kind of start building out our network plan. And one thing I wanted to say about the addresses too, and we do this with every town we work with. It's always a collaborative effort, and that works out better because there's better data, better information. We get more people involved. When we start looking at addresses, we have our own customer database because we know where you all live. We're the phone company after all. We have a customer database, so we start with that, okay? But we also then get the E911 addresses from the state and we plot those on the map. And then the things that you guys did, actually boots on the ground, going out and identifying, you're doing the pole, we call it pole spotting 101, you know, going out and doing that work. That then captures the rest of that data for those dead spots, those spots in there where we didn't identify, where we couldn't identify that there was an unserved spot and where there wasn't. It's amazing to me how E91 and town records and all that, it never quite matches up, never, ever. So it really gets down to boots on the ground, kind of counting polls and actually putting that stuff on a spreadsheet and then plotting it on a map. So we're very comfortable with that. And so we think we've got a good database now. Okay, this is where your hair is going to hurt for a little while, okay? All right, so this is the model. This is how when we get started, and you guys, if you have, if you got the handout, you can kind of look at it. It's going to be easier to read on paper probably. So what we do is we have the spreadsheet that we use, and this is meant to be, and now first I'll always show you, look at the very bottom, not a formal bid, rough high-level estimates, only for internal planning purposes. So did I say that enough? Don't hold me to this. But what this is, and it is a high-level budgeting document for what we know at this time. We haven't done that next level of detailed engineering yet that we need to get into, especially when we get into the mechanics of building out and expanding our central office equipment, those kind of the electronics. But we're very confident, in fact, that these numbers coming from our experience, represent what these projects are going to, in a pretty close, what these projects are going to cost. So let me just show you how they work. Remember the yellow lines? Well, there they are. We already got fiber there. Those are the yellow lines, and also the orange ones. We already have fiber there. So those, whereas where we have fiber, so I'm going to look at Damariscotta. So we have 938 locations that are already sitting under fiber in Damariscotta. And I'm sorry, more than that, 937 altogether. Okay, and that's about 20 miles of fiber that's built out. Okay. However, understand, look at that, 938 of those, but we only have 132 who are actually subscribing to it at this time. So that's another issue. Okay. So we have quite a bit of growth potential there for potential subscribers to fiber. The blue, remember, the blue is where cable TV is, where Spectrum is, okay? So you have about 21 miles of Spectrum out there sitting in front of 580 subscribers. And then in the green, those are the ones that are the unserved, the below 50 by 10. Best they can get is DSL service now. About 5 miles of those representing 100, that's the 103 unserved in Damariscotta. Sure.
Business model.
In your business model planning, when you look at the take rate in that first column, is that price sensitive or other factors are dominant?
You know what, it's other factors dominant. It's not price sensitive. The people aren't aware of it, that it's available. They don't understand the benefit of it, perhaps. We haven't done that. That's one of those things that we need to get the word out more so they can take advantage of it. We think it's our entry level fiber product is about the same or even a little bit cheaper than DSL. So it is getting people comfortable in making the change as well. But so that's part of it. Some of it's marketing that needs to happen for that. Yeah, it's not price in that case. Okay, and then also speaking of take rates, I'm glad you brought that up. So when we look at, all right, so the thing we're going to be focusing on with this is we already got fiber in the yellow and the orange. Okay, so it's the blue and the green. That's where we got to go. We want to get fiber in front of everybody, 100% fiber. So let's say we built out fiber to all in front of where all the Spectrum lines are right now. We overbuilt that. Even when we build that, we typically, when we first start a project where we overbuild where Spectrum is, we typically set the take rate at about 40%. Not that high, you'd think. And everybody thinks, no, if you get it in front of me, everybody's going to want it. Change is hard. It's just hard and it takes time. But the initial take rate's about 40%. However, once we get out and then neighbors have it, more people have that fiber and they understand the benefit of it, the take rate starts to take off on its own. But the initial take rate's about 40% where there is cable already. However, in the green area, obviously where the best they can do right now is DSL. And as you saw from your surveys, they're ready. They are ready to go. 80% off the bat. And that we could almost bank on that take rate for those areas. So we know that's the case. So anyhow, I just wanted to point that out. This next part, and once I get off through these charts, and we'll stop looking at all these funny numbers, but this is where we get into just some of the multipliers that we use to set the pricing or what we think the cost is. Overlash for construction per mile is about $20,000. And that's what we're going to do in Damariscotta because you're already in our telephone company. So we already have wire up there. And strand up there. We don't have to put new wire and strand up. We can overlash on it, which is cheaper. If you look one line down, if we're doing it in other areas, it's about $25,000, 20% more. All right, 5% more. I'm sorry.
Could you define those terms, overlaps and strand?
Sure. The strand is a kind of a, wish I had a field engineer. They never should send me out without a field engineer. And they're probably home listening to this laughing at me right now. But the strand is between the poles. Okay, it's about the poles are about, that average span is about 250 feet between telephone poles. Every 250 feet, that's about what you have. So to keep that tension on the wire there, they actually put a metal, it's a metal strand, a metal wire. That's the strand between the poles, and tighten it up, and they can really pull it tight. Then over that is where they literally overlash or connect onto it in the copper wire, or in this case, it's going to be the fiber wire. So we already have that up on all the poles. That's why we don't, our cost per mile is only $20,000 versus those areas like in that little bitty box in Newcastle, there were CEI. Okay, it's going to cost us about $25,000 a mile to do that because we have to get strand in there. It's going to cost us more to get on those poles, plus pay make ready cost. But in Damariscotta, we don't have that cost. So about $20,000 a mile. That's kind of a, and that number is working out. The number is working out really well. It's we've refined it. It's it's a ballpark number, but it's pretty close. We know that also there's about, since there's no other make-ready cost in Damariscotta, the other thing we have to worry about is this line here. It's the one that's called drop ONT CO optical electronics per subscriber. Okay, that's a lot of stuff. This basically what that is, that's the cost from the pole to the house, pole to the premise is what I call it, okay? So, and that includes the drop is the drop wire. It's a fiber wire that's eventually gets spliced into the main wire at the pole. And it's the fiber wire that goes all the way to the house and gets attached to the outside of the house. Or through a conduit all the way to the house if they have a conduit buried. So that's the drop. The ONT is the optical network terminal. That's the device that is on the house that the fiber goes into that converts that, really, that's the magic box, okay? It's the one that converts those light waves into electronic signals, okay? And then the others are any other optical network devices that we need per subscriber that we might need in the central office too. So when we look at all of that stuff, the drop wire, the ONT, which is very expensive, that's where the little card that goes in, that's the brain of the whole thing. And they're hard to get right now. So we're really staying on top of that. And any other electronics that may be attributed to that individual subscriber, plus the labor to do that. When you put that all together, it's about $1,500 for each connection. Each time we do that, drop to the house, it's about $1,500.
Excuse me, are you including power backup at the house? Is part of that package?
We do, and it includes battery backup, and also in this $1,500 also includes the router. That's for, and we're very happy. We've just moved to a whole new router system, Calyx, a high-end router, U6 router. Once again, way out of my area of expertise. Don't ask me too many questions about it. But what I do know is it's meant to be a whole house Wi-Fi system. So it's better. It's a better router for Wi-Fi, but it also is meant to be so we can have better troubleshooting. We can diagnose everything through that without leaving. Our goal is, as a company, is to cut down truck rolls, but it's also to keep you happy. So if we can work from that and we can be diagnosing, we can look on that router. You call in and say, "Hey, what's the deal? I got 100 meg from you guys, and it's still slow. What's going on?" While you're talking, one of our techs is looking right at it, and he's going to say, "I see that you've got 27 devices running on that, and one of them is a laptop made in 1942. Well, they won't say that, but they'll tell you, they'll be able to look at what you have going on, and they'll be able to say, "Here's what's going on. You're back in this other, where are you at?" And I'll say, "Well, I'm in this part of my house." We can say there's some devices that may be harming that, or maybe what they can help diagnose that problem. Or if it's not that, if it's our equipment, we'll know that right away too, okay?
Can I ask you, is that $1,500 could be borne by the subscriber or part of the build cost?
It's part of the build cost. So that's part of what we would, in fact, we'd want to get funding for, from grants, that kind of thing. We would put in money, town puts in money, that's all covered in the build. Here's what's not, and I'm glad you brought that up, because we want to, and that was in our proposal that we sent to the RFI. I want to make sure everyone understands, especially for the Connect Main grant piece of this. The way we do it is we give for the price. There's no, with the grant programs, we have no install cost to the individual subscriber, no contract, and you get the first 500 feet of drop free, 500 feet from the pole to the house. Now, wait a minute, I live farther back. I'm 750 feet. And the answer is that's right. That's going to cost you more. So it's $1 per foot beyond the 500. So that'd be another $250 that the homeowner would have to bear beyond that, and you can do the math for 1,000, whatever. So those are some of the costs. It's also, if you're in conduit, it's $2 per foot to pull that beyond the free part to the house. So other than that, then you get your router, battery backup, O&T, all included with the cost. So
Can I ask you how you arrived at that threshold, 250 feet?
500.
500. Well, 500.
Yeah, actually, we just doubled it. It'd been 250 feet for the 5 years that I've been here. We just doubled it this last round with Connect Main. So yeah, that made a huge difference. I mean, it just does. That most people are within the 500 feet. They are. So there are a bunch that aren't. And we have to deal with those individually.
Another question on that, the 1,500.
Yep.
That you don't incur that until someone subscribes, or do you put all this, or you're not putting obviously the ONTs out until there's a subscriber and it gets installed on the house.
That's right. That's right. That's in there so we can calculate. When we look at for example, if you look in the green column and you go across that 1,500 feet, you can see that, well, we for those 82 customers that we think we're going to get initially on a take rate, so we're going to need $123,000 worth of equipment and labor to do
Right.
that.
So it's all based on the target subscriber number.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other question was a make ready per pole.
Mhm.
You're not placing poles, but this is the other work that needs to be done per pole.
Right.
Making connections, things
Yep.
like that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly. And then and then
The same on what you own, or?
no. So that's the thing. So there's no make ready on. That's why you'll see on this one. Everything in Damariscotta is going to be on the poles that we already are on. So there's no, and we maintain those. So there's no make ready cost. Make ready. That's another thing I should explain. I'm using all these terms that I assume everybody knows. Make ready is when, for example, in that one corner of Newcastle, when we want to go out there and we want to build fiber out to those folks, I can't remember how out there, the 28 homes or something in that little corner. I can't remember. We want to do that. We're going to have to get on those poles, and there already are wires on those poles. There's consolidated, there's power, there's spectrums on, and all that stuff. So to do that, you have to make the pole ready to be able to put our fiber on it, which means you've got to move their other companies' wires around, and there's standards for that, so many inches apart, etc. And you have to agree with it in this case, consolidated. You do what they call a write out. Our engineers go out with the consolidated people. They drive that. They agree on which ones need to be moved, etc. And then they make that, and then we incur that cost of going in and having those wires moved around. So it's ready for us then to put our fiber in the right space. So that's what make ready means. And you won't have a lot of that, but in that one part of Newcastle, you do have it. And you'll see the cost, how that affects the price per cost per home, why that's so expensive. All right, so looking at the other part then, and it'll go quicker from here on out, I promise. The other part is this additional CO cost. CO is our central office. That's the term we use, CO, central office. We have one right here, up here. Yeah, that's right. And so that's the main one that services this area. We also have a central office and other cabinets, those kinds of things in Newcastle as well. And so to do that, we've factored in just a 33% base. Once again, this is one of those ones where we didn't have all the detailed engineering yet ready for this. At the high level, though, we put in a 33% of all the rather regular construction work, a 33% increase of that towards what we believe would be additional CO costs. Then we've added on, so when you look at that, the basic, you can see right there what the basic cost of the construction is to get it out there. We add on as a part of the grants that we apply for. Whoops, no, did I just change? Where am I at? Sorry. There we go. We add on these additional pieces, 2% for administrative and legal costs, 2% for project inspection fees. That's after the project's done because of the grantor. There's a routine inspection process that has to happen to keep to do the reporting for the grants. 10% for engineering, that additional engineering that has to happen. And then we just put in 5% for contingencies that we don't know. So those are kind of become our standards. Now, here's the thing I want to say about those things, or those plug numbers are there, and any of these numbers. And if we get a grant or if we get town money, we don't spend a dime of it unless it's an invoiceable part of the project. In other words, this isn't padding, in other words, okay? If I don't have any administrative legal fees, I don't charge any administrative. I got to have that. If I don't have, they're going to be what they cost. They're only going to be reimbursable based on an invoice. So I want to make sure people understand that, because I know I go through that. I assume that We know that. We want to make sure that you know that as well. Okay. All right. So real quick, Damariscotta, let's look at the bottom line. You went 100% fiber to the home in Damariscotta. Let me go back. I keep hitting that thing. It's $1.556 million. So if
Not
Matt
bad.
if Matt could just write a check this evening, we get started right away. Okay, but that's the big picture. That's why we call this the sticker shock part of the program. We're going to show you. That's what it's going to cost, okay, to do it. And obviously, the biggest part of that is getting it out and overbuilding where spectrum is. And that's 1.2 million of that 1.556 million, okay? The unserved part, you can see there in the green down here, that's about $347,000. So to get to those unserved, that's project one for us, we think. And we think that's what you'll want as well. And what we're recommending applying for a Connect Main grant now for would be $347,000. But to get the whole thing done for Damariscotta, 100% fiber to the home, 1.556 million, and it's going to be pretty darn close to that.
So Alan, Rick Hagan here, let me ask you a question. Has there been any studies done about the propensity to buy by consumers? And secondly, is there redundancy built into the system in case something goes bad?
Let me talk about answer the redundancy question first. Once again, I'm not an engineer, and we can bring them in and we can answer all those questions. Oh, there you go. I've got one. I happen to have an engineer on Zoom.
Alan, this is Randall. Yeah, there's multiple redundancies built into the system, whether it's network redundancy or it's battery backup or it's generator backup and equipment backup. We built it like a phone company. That's what we've always built for years because we're regulated by the PUC. So yeah, there's multiple redundancies in, and it's a very large backbone going to the internet too. I'm going to throw that in there. I know Alan was trying to answer that, but we have over 40 gig in multiple accesses out of the state and different routes to the internet. And one of the main hubs is right here in Noblesboro. So you don't have far to go. We can always add more capacity between the Damariscotta office in Noblesboro very easily. We have DWDM equipment. We can add frequencies and grow the backbone real easy.
Great, thank you for that. And also, my other question would be is, have you thought about a price point per subscriber?
Price point, what price point per subscriber for adding like an extra amount to help pay for it? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think it's just talking about price in general for what a subscriber price would be for 100 meg.
Okay, yeah, we
Cost
have
study.
pricing right now, but it's constantly changing, and at this point, it's never gone up since we started doing it. It's gone down. And what we're finding is that the internet backhaul is getting cheaper and cheaper, so that's helped us. Our biggest cost over the last few years is rebuilding our middle mile for backhaul with redundancy and capacity to handle everybody. So the cost has gone down. What is our 50 by 10 right now is $69.95 with a phone, and our 100 by 20 is $89.95 with a phone, Alan. We're working on a service that's it's larger bandwidth that you may not have to have a phone with, and you get the router and a wire maintenance contract with it. We're on the edge of putting that out there. I'm working my controller on it right now.
Thank you so much. Those are good answers.
Good. All right, I'm going to go to, so that's Damariscotta. Going to go real quick for Newcastle because you're real familiar with it, okay? Boom, same kind of chart, all right? Yellow and orange is already done. You already got fiber in front of those folks. The blue, that's where cable is. You got 29, 30, let's call it 33 miles of blue cable customers there. That is what, 700 and whatever that is, 735-ish homes in that fall under that have only access to, they don't have access to fiber. They do have access to cable broadband. And then in the unserved area, the green, you have about 4.5 miles of that, 99 households that are in the unserved area in Newcastle. Now, this is where I talked about, remember that little part of Newcastle that is covered by CCI. That's what this blue column is here. So they had to put in an extra column to cover those costs, and that's where those make-ready costs are. That's where it's going to cost a little bit more, those areas. Then over in the green, because there's some unserved out in that area too, there's some make-ready costs for that as well. So we had to add all that in. The rest of the take rates and all that stuff are the same. We're making the same assumptions. 40% if the spectrum already in front of them, 80% if the best they can do is DSL right now. That's kind of our starting point. All the other prices are the same, that $1,500 per subscriber, the pole to the premise thing. So let's look at the bottom line then. So for Newcastle, the bottom line is you want fiber to the home 100% for everybody that doesn't have it already right now. It's $2.1 million. Okay. So how does that break down? So it's about 1.6 million plus 1.75 million, let's say, to get all that fiber in front of where those cable customers are now, and then another 336,000 to get fiber in front of those unserved locations that are out there right now. Okay. So, and I'm going to show you some. You're going to feel a lot better in just 1 second. Boom! Look at that. See, it's just this simple. Now, here's a summary chart. Okay. I want you to forget that other chart, except for the bit twiddlers who really want to get into that, and the accountants and stuff. This is what you want to focus on, and just a really easy way to look at it. Okay. Damariscotta, yellow, it's fully served. They're already done. 17 miles, 947 addresses. The blue, that's where the cable is. $1.2 million to build out fiber to those 580 addresses. It's 20 miles, 21 miles. The unserved, the green, about 5 miles, 103 addresses, $347,000 for that part. So you can see with the 1.2 million, 347. If you want to do it all, it's 1.556. Newcastle, yellow's already done. Don't have to worry about that part. So those 405 are in there, those 15.6 miles, they can get it now. The blue, that's where cable is. They have 729 addresses, 32 miles. That's 1.77 mile, 1.8 million, okay? The green, unserved in Newcastle, 99 addresses at about 4.5 miles. That's 336,000. So you can see that Newcastle is more expensive. It is it's more far flung. It costs more to build some of that, and that's the reason. And you'll see it by looking when you go back and look at the maps. When you see where the green are the unserved, you see where the green are. They're all the way out at the ends because they're the most costly to get to. So people stop building them. So that's why we got to get them built. So that's really. I want you to be focused on that as for your thinking purposes. When you talk to people about this, this is a good slide to use to help people get their minds around it. And we already talked about kind of on this side here. These are the Connect Main definitions. Unserved, below 50 by 10. Served means that you're getting at least 50 by 10. So technically, if you're sitting under Spectrum cable, you are served because they can provide you at least 50 by 10. Fully served, we consider that to be the yellow because we can guarantee a minimum 100 by 100 at every location, okay? And then there's this new category that's coming out, it's called underserved. And that's anything that's between 50 by 10 and 100 by 100. So that gets to that issue, and that's still a little murky right now about where that is, who that is. Can Spectrum provide 100 by 100 consistently on all those blue lines that are out there? If so, then they're fully served. If not, there could be an unserved thing there too that could qualify for some grant funds, okay, under the new provisions of Connect Main and possibly some new federal funding that will be coming as well. So that's one of the things we just don't quite know yet. We're working on all of that and learning it as we go along, but that's a new piece. The green we know. So. Sure.
One of the uses that will be common on your network will be the distribution of entertainment streams. And are you going to be able to guarantee no end user device buffering with the service that you're providing?
Guarantee it. Help me out, Randall. I think the answer is yes. If you got a minimum 100 by 100, that's what would be selling. That if you can buy that, you can get it in the minimum 100. You're going to be able to meet all of those kind of the video needs. I'm talking about video streaming, live streaming in particular. You're going to be able to meet all those. Want to jump in, Randall?
Yeah, no, definitely to the side of the building, we can definitely guarantee whatever we put there is gonna have the capacity that we promised you. And if it's 100 by 100 and you're doing a 20 meg stream for high definition, easily handle it. The big thing that we're finding with our customers, and that's why we're bringing the new router in to help with that, is the buffering is really happening with the Wi-Fi. A lot of TVs and Fire Sticks and Rokus connect via Wi-Fi, and the placement in the house is key for that circle of death. And the goal is to obviously beef up the router so it can handle that. Years ago, we brought a DSL connection in, and we had a great router that could handle the little DSL connection, no problem. A modem and slash router. But now, we moved away from the desk and your PC to multiple devices working in the house. There's key things that you have to take into consideration, and that's why we're really working on beyond the interface. And multiple devices are connected that you're not seeing, could cause buffering. The placement of your device in the house compared to your router can cause buffering, but I guarantee it from the router back. I mean, we'll have outages and things like that, stuff that can cause stuff, but to say that never happens is can't say it. But with our redundancy built in and the size of the bandwidth is true what it is to the side of the house. Now, I truly believe that most of the things we're identifying from calls from our customers have been stuff with modems or routers or stuff that's not up to par anymore. And they can't handle what big bandwidth is coming in and distribute it throughout the house. And so this new router is very robust. It can do a lot better, and we can also add mesh units on it. And the goal is we can get our plan together here is to map out our customer's house and let them know what they get for speeds in every room, so they see have no false sense of, I'm supposed to get 100 meg in this back room. Well, that's not how it works. So there's a lot to be considered there, but as far as the fiber connection to the side of the house, easily, unless you're streaming 25 things at once, you should be able to handle it.
Okay.
Alan, I have a
yeah, sure.
question as well.
Sure.
Is the service, I know that it's my understanding that your service includes both internet and phone. Is that going to continue to be the case, or is it going to be possible to get just internet without having phone service?
Randall.
That's what we're working on right now. Glad you asked the question. I mentioned it earlier, but the goal is that I'm so close with my controller right now, working on the price point of that. And goal is to eliminate phone and offer more bandwidth and the new router with a Wi-Fi managed all in one price. Keep it simple.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question for the engineer, a technical question. Lou Rector recommended that we put 2-inch conduits in for the fiber
Yep.
distribution.
Yep.
Is that still the case?
2-inch conduits, I
Yeah,
think.
that-
Yep.
Yeah, I believe that's the best thing to do. I mean, obviously, we try to work with the customer if they got something in there that's not. Sometimes it's very hard. With a 2-inch conduit, gives us the space to pull the fiber through. If you're going around corners, you have any type of issues within the conduit, you can still maybe get it in there. So the goal is to try to tell the customer that you should try to get a 2-inch conduit or larger in place. All depends what you're doing inside the conduit. But yeah, Louis has been saying that for a long time now, and I agree with him.
But you just said or larger.
Yeah. I was a technician for years, and trust me, I pulled fiber through lots of conduit, and in long runs, it can get pretty hard, even with a bigger conduit.
I just got to stop for a minute there too and say, we take this for granted, and I think a lot of you are pretty knowledgeable on this stuff too, but it's glass. It's a strand of glass. It's a fiber made out of glass, really, where that light's going through there. So it's always still amazing to me that we can do it. And it's not completely flexible. You can't do that. So you do have to be able to be careful how you're putting it in. that's part of why the conduit and the spacing is so important, but it's an amazing thing that we do it at all. So yeah.
Alan, how long does it take or will it take for the whole chart to be yellow? And have your cost projections, are they going to change over time, especially given it seems like things are more expensive now?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get to that in a second.
Okay.
But I didn't, in fact, we haven't yet factored in the numbers you've been looking at, kind of this, what happens over the next couple of years, inflation and supply chain issues. We've certainly felt them. We know that it's impacted us just in fiber, getting fiber and electronics for sure. And in fact, we were just revising another federal grant application today, and they kept saying, well, you're going to be, we had quotes done late summer, and they said, great, well, you're going to stick by those quotes. And we said, no, those quotes have expired. They've been increased. We're going to have to ask for more. So that does have to be taken into consideration for sure. So let me get to this. So, all right, this is what it's going to cost. 1.55 million for Damariscotta, 2.1 million for Newcastle. So how do we get there? So here's how we get there. All right, once again, just looking at the top, it's just Damariscotta. And let's just look at the green part, the unserved, okay? So we know Damariscotta, 103 locations, right? And we know it's going to cost $347,000, right? Got that? So what we are assuming is that we believe, first of all, we think these are very good Connect Main, the unserved in particular, are very good, excellent Connect Main grant candidates. This is exactly what Connect Main loves. Okay, they would score very high. And we believe we could qualify for a 40% grant for that, which would cover 139,000 of that 347. Well, that leaves 208,000 to go. Okay. What we're really committing to do is to say we have to match that amount, and we would put in 50% of that match if the town would put in 50% match too. So that's $104,000 each. So for 30%, you're getting the 100% of the project for those unserved done with the grant money when the grant money is involved. So that's that phase one part of it. Phase two, it's kind of that was the tail. Now we're going to talk about the dog. Okay. Phase two is 1.2 million. All right. So we already know that. And the other thing I want to point out, first of all, let me back up to phase one. That's probably, and you're asking about, it's reasonable to ask, well, when would that be done? If we qualify for the grant and they submit our grant March 20th and we'll say we get it, we probably, that project will probably start July 1, I think, maybe sooner, I'm not sure, but probably then. So it's usually a 12-month. For that size of a project, they usually give you a 12-month window for Connect Main. Larger than that, though, they give you multi-years to do it, but that one's probably a 1-year project. So once again, those 103 people, we should have fiber in front of them in 1 year, and many of them hooked up, obviously using it. The next part, though, the dog, that 1.2 million one, that's a multi-year. When I put that in capital letters, so everybody understands that that's a multi-year project. Let's say we get that. Let's say we figure out how to fund that. Okay, it's 1.2 million, and we find other grant sources for that helps drive that price down. So it's really only, let's say we find $500,000 in other state and federal grants that we can apply to that. Well, that leaves 700,000 that's left to pay for. Once again, and you can see right above, we're prepared to commit 50% if the town commits 50%, and that match going forward. We'll put in that 50% of the total project. The more we can drive that price down is good for the town, because whatever we get, we share that. Your price goes down, our price goes down. Our piece of that 50% goes down, right? The match. So that's our goal. So we really want to work aggressively to drive that 1.2 million down and look for creative ways to do that. And that'll take a little bit longer to do, to find that money, to figure out how to do it, to figure out how towns are going to pay for that, figure out how we're going to pay for that. We only have so much in our capital budget each year for new expansion. So that's why it's a multi-year approach. Okay. Okay, looking at Newcastle, same thing. We know the whole deal is 2.1 million, but let's break it out. So for the unserved, those 99 locations, it's 336,000. All right. Once again, if we get 40% Connect Main, that covers 134,000 of it, 135,000-ish. Then that leaves 202,000 left to go. We split that up evenly between Tidewater and the town. They each put in 101,000. That gives us the total 336,000 to build out for those 99 unserved locations. Then looking down, and that would be part of that Connect Main grant piece, okay? Then looking down, where's the rest? So what does that leave? Well, that leaves 1.7 million for the rest of the town. If we really wanted to have 100% fiber to the home throughout all of Newcastle, 1.8 million dollars left. Obviously, once again, same thing happens there. We have to be aggressive and looking for ways to find funds to drive that 1.77 down. And there are funds. There's funds coming, and it's about how we define that, how aggressively we can go after those, both state and federal funds over the next couple of years. And then, because that's going to reduce the amount that both the town puts in and the Tidewater has to put in terms of capital investment to get 100% fiber to the home built out. So once again, we started with phase one. That seems to be the priority piece, getting all those unserved ones from your survey in particular, those folks, like they need help in getting them in first. And then looking at how we overbuild where the cable is to get the rest of them done. Okay? Yes.
So can you do phase one without committing to phase two? Can you do the underserved without doing the multi-year plan?
Can we do that?
Well, I'm just wondering, I mean, is it
Sure.
codependent or is it if you get the underserved and the funds aren't there, let's say, to do the rest of the ball wax,
Right.
Are those people going to lose service, or or do they have service no matter what?
No, those could be, you're talking about, first of all, we can separate those two. That's why we separate them. If we get to phase one, it's done, it's in, they're using it. Okay, that's
Yeah.
never going to go away.
Yeah.
And yes, we could do that separately. Okay, we do connect main grants like that all the time. However, what the town has asked us to, what the committees have asked us to, give us a plan for 100% fiber to them. How would you do that? And so that leaves that other part that needs to be somehow funded to do, the cable overbuild part. That's the tough part. But it's also that, once again, we can do that. There's planning to do that. The towns, I always say it gets down to the appetite of the individual town too. That piece down there, that extra piece that has to be done. The question is, how quickly do you want it done? Everybody wants it done. Everybody agrees. We want to have 100% fiber to the home. Every town I go to, I want 100% fiber to the home. The question is, how quickly do you want it? Well, we want it now. Okay, let's get aggressive on funding it. And then when you start showing some of the numbers, like, when I said now, what I really meant was when you find all the other money. No. So that's where we got, I think that's when you see, and I get to the next slide, it's going to be what are the next steps? And part of that is looking at that phase two. How do we do that? And giving ourselves time to really understand that as a community. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So I just had a question on the drop ONT CO optical electronics per subscriber. That's $1,500. But you have it. So if more than 50% of the existing Tidewater want to sign up, that number goes up. It's not like a. So if 100% of the people want to sign up in that area, does that 1,500 per customer double? Does that line double for that?
No, it doesn't. That's still going to be our cost. It's going to be involved. Now, once again, with the Connect Main grant, let's say, okay, I'm looking at the Newcastle one. So they've got 99 homes that are unserved. We get that grant, let's say, that's great. Well, we know that built into that grant is going to be $1,500 for every one of those 82 or whatever, 80 that we said we're going to apply. Okay, so those are covered. Once we hit that, then we can still, fiber's still in front of all those other ones. If they want it, but they weren't a part of that initial piece, there may be an installation cost. So that's part of it. It wouldn't be $1,500. Now we're charging $100. But then we just build that cost into our long-term return on our cost. So
that number wouldn't change.
No,
Depending
well,
on
that
how many
number will
people
change,
sign
but it'll
up.
be transparent to the subscriber. It's going to affect us, our cost of doing business. I don't know if I made that clear, but yeah, it shouldn't happen. One thing I wanted to point out was the other part in both of these charts, there's this little pink thing in pink over here in Damariscotta, that subtotal of 373,000. That's money that Tidewater is going to be investing anyhow, because remember the yellow and the orange, we already got fiber up there. So we're not going to get any more grant money for that. We're going to incur that cost anyhow, because that's each one of those who apply, then we're going to have to do that $1,500 per subscriber.
I had a quick question, I guess, on the what do we call it? I don't have my glasses on. The houses that do not have service
Mhm.
of the 99 in Newcastle.
Mhm. unserved.
How do we know how many of those are just summer cottages on, like, a lot of these go down to the lake, the unserved roads? How many of them are just seasonal cottages where they probably won't sign up for? I mean, they're included in these numbers, I assume.
They're not isolated out. No, we
Okay.
haven't done that yet. No. Nope. And that
I'm
is
just
an
wondering
issue.
how that impacts the bottom line then.
Well, typically we would be offering seasonal packages as well. So that mitigates that for a lot of those users. Believe me, when they're here, they come from fiber. They want to have fiber.
Well, there are a few people who like to escape it too.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I met all three of them. so.
yes.
Another thing to consider is how many would not be seasonal if they actually had service in those locations.
Bingo.
Oh, and insulation in the house.
Sure, and everything else that they want. Hot tub garage.
But that is an issue. That is an issue. Once they convert over, the fiber is reliable. People like that. Lots of times they can, one of the things with that too, by having the fiber there, they can have a security camera running nicely, easily, cheaply. They're there watching their prod. They can watch their dock. They can watch the stuff. They can, it's kind of a nice thing to do. And so fiber offers that availability. We found a lot of seasonal folks like that.
Can I ask you,
Sure.
the 40% contribution from the
From Connect Main,
CME,
right? Yep, Connect Main Authority.
that, what's the window for those funds to be available?
Okay, so that grant, that grant round is open right now. Okay, they have $16.5 million in the grant round that they're going to be issuing right now. The applications are due March 20th. So you'll see that in a second. I'm going to show you some of the timelines. So that'll be available. Like I say, if we are fortunate to get that, we'd be drawing down on that July 1, and it would be of this year, and it would probably be a 12-month project. So by July 1 of next year, that fiber should be up in those unserved being served. the ones who
See
want to-
those funds becoming available on a regular basis? Like, in other words, if we chose to do only part of the town now
Yeah.
and not, you do.
Once again, I can't see the future, but I see that there's a lot more infrastructure money coming. That we have a new, the Connect Main Authority is really going to be kind of phased out. It's become a sub-unit of the new Main Connectivity Authority, not to be confused with Connect Main Authority. Very clever. Yeah, it's Main Connectivity Authority is the new body, and they put that body in place, that new organization in place to handle this huge new infusion of federal funds that are coming that we've never had before. The stimulus money hasn't really been put into that bucket yet. Okay.
Yeah,
So
but,
there's some money there that we started with 6.5 million that Connect Main still had for this round. They were able to go ahead and put in another 10 million right in this first round that we've never, that's more than we've ever had. And that's just the beginning of it. So I project, at least for the next several years, that money will be there.
going like that, because I also understand the county gets money.
Yep.
And they're trying to decide where
Yep.
to participate.
And that's where,
Talk with Mary Ellen at Lincoln County Regional Planning Commission.
and that's where those kinds of things are really important to know from the municipal level, from the county level, how they're using those funds, the ARPA funds and other kind of funds that are specifically for broadband.
So
How
it
do
may
you
be
do that?
possible for the town to get some funds through the county to cover their cost.
I think
Is that accurate assessment?
that I can't.
It's definitely worth an ask. I will say that for sure.
Mary Ellen just signs off, right?
But that's, you're not the only county that's asking. I have the exact same conversation with towns in Knox County just 2 weeks ago. Same thing, yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question about internal finance.
Hmm.
What is your amortization situation for gear like this? Are you using an amortization protocol, which is going to give us the optimally lowest price, or do you have your amortization schedule with the federal income tax stretching out further than it really needs to be?
Yeah, I can't answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, but we can find that information out for sure.
So, but as a perhaps adjustment, if a faster amortization period could be, or a shorter one,
Mhm.
could be arranged, that might have some impact on pricing.
That's-
Not a large, but
And I will say this, and Randall mentioned this just a little while ago. One of the things that's going on right now on subscriber pricing, we're doing, it's a major cost study. Franklin has taken time to do that, to really look at all of our costs, all the way down to, because we're really trying to understand the margins and how we do that, and then that cost of money and all that stuff that accountants understand much better than I do. But once we have that in place, then we can take a look at all of that. And it's going to show that piece, how do we do that? And then how do we, and it is true that we know that the cost per megabit has gone down every year since we've been doing this for 10 years, or more than 10 years. So we know that much. Electronics have gone up, the megabits have gone down. So there's the other costs that we're trying to identify, and then looking how we relate to the rest of the marketplace, and then how do we fine tune that? So those are options where we want to keep. Affordability is one of the key things. Everybody, it's part of what you asked for in your RFI. It's part of what your surveys are saying. Yeah, I would need it, but I got to be able to afford it too. So that's another part of what we want to do.
I didn't expect a clear answer,
Yeah.
but it was a probe to see if there's a little piece of elasticity.
Yeah, once again, I can't speak to that, but
Sure.
yeah, I understand your question.
Good.
You're listening, put it that way.
In this proposal, the non-grant costs are proposed to be split evenly between Tidewater and the towns.
Right.
If I use the numbers in the spreadsheet on the existing Tidewater, I come up with a CapEx per subscriber of about 2,000. So presumably, and maybe your numbers were a little different when you actually did that, but the business case presumably played out to do that for Tidewater to make that investment on their own. So are you open to changing that 50-50 proposal?
That's the proposal we have in front of you tonight. That's what I've been authorized to be here. And I know that we've had some meetings already. We talked about that. Randall and the owners. That's where they're committed to do that. And that's part of what we wanted to do. We wanted to roll that out and say, remember I was talking about appetite? How's your appetite? Because we can get this, and it's not to just be funny, but because we can get this done. You can be 100% fiber to the home community pretty quick, relatively speaking.
I just had a quick question on the phase 1 timeline. So the
Okay.
Connect Main grant application is due on March 20th.
Yep,
Of
you got
this
ahead of
year?
me. Look at him. Okay, yes, go ahead.
Oh, I thought we already touched on that. We didn't.
No, I was just getting you
All
there.
right.
Let me
Wait,
run
you
through
want
it
me to
real
wait
quick.
on that then?
Yeah, let me just run through it and then we'll answer questions.
Okay.
Okay. So okay, next steps, because I got to stop talking sometime. Phase 1, this is what we were proposing, is then applying for that Connect Main grant for those unserved. Okay, that was the first part. Both select boards, and I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but both select boards will need to vote to pursue the Connect Main grant with Tidewater. The towns and Tidewater would each provide 50% of the grant match funding. And so I'm assuming, once again, select boards and have to approve that and fund that and come up with that. It's out of our area. Tidewater will then take the lead on compiling and submitting the Connect Main grant round, but you're not out of the work yet, Evan, with support from towns as needed, and because that's vital for us. Data collection, supporting documents, letters of commitment, those are very important parts of that application package that go in. And all of that then is due on March 20th. So that gets to your issue of, and that's doable. It's a lift. They've changed a number of the grant application guidelines, and they made it tougher and more onerous, but fairer, I think, for scoring purposes, all in all. So we'll have to have that done. So once again, as soon as towns are ready to make that commitment, we're ready to start pulling it all together for the phase 1 part. Yeah.
Sorry, so my question, the grant
Mhm.
application doesn't get submitted until the towns commit to the funding on phase
Right.
1.
Yeah, right. For that piece, yeah. That's what we're proposing, is the phase 1 is the thing that needs to happen.
But that,
No.
and then is that Connect Main money isn't necessarily guaranteed, right? Or it is guaranteed.
Well, you have to apply, it's a competitive grant.
Yeah.
We either,
So it could be, I mean, if we commit to it and we don't get the grant, then it's going to be more money. Is that
if you didn't get the grant, you'd have to pay for it through, if you wanted that done, you'd have to pay it through. the other
right? So I'm
sources.
just trying to, from
Yeah,
a budgeting standpoint in the town. So I don't have any of this. We don't have any of this in our budget,
Yep.
in our current budget.
Yep.
So we can't just spend money without the voters approving it.
Right.
So we would have to put it in next year's budget and get it approved, but our warrant is approved in June. So
Mhm.
that June is after March.
Yeah.
So if we had to commit to it, I can't, you know what I mean?
Yep.
We'd have to have a special town meeting or do something. So that's why I'm understanding the level of commitment, whether we get the grant before we commit the money or.
I understand the question now. So yeah, the answer is, if we submit the grant application on March 20th, first part of April, they're going to be reviewing them. The scoring mechanism, you actually get more points if the commitment is an actual commitment versus a contingent commitment. It's contingent upon being voted on by, you lose point on your grant application. So that's where it's competitive. They want to say, who's really got the appetite? Who's got the skin in the game already? And then we know that there's a process that has to be done. So, and it takes time and it has to be dealt with your schedule. You know, I understand I can't fix that part. But we can do it with contingencies, but that's.
We can't, commit money without voter approval. So that's the tricky thing with town money, because it's not our money.
I called our attorney before this just to ask about this, and he said that while the select board could authorize moving forward with phase one, the voters ultimately would be able to rescind that authorization if it were placed on the warrant come June. So. That's the select board. That would be up to the select board to decide if they want to move forward, right?
So would they look at that as a contingent, or would they say if the select board authorized it?
Well, if the select board authorized it and had funds that was available, then it wouldn't be contingent, but apparently.
If it could be rescinded, it's contingent.
In your estimation, what is the difference in the likely outcome of the town of the two situations, the contingency or money up front?
Well, money up front's always a better.
Right. But can you
It's gonna make a better application.
give any idea of what the
I
difference in outcome is like?
can't, because this is the first time in this grant round, they've actually put that in.
Okay, thank
But
you.
they've added it's always kind of been in there, but it was subjective. Now they're starting to add some actual point structures around it.
The question was, are you betting?
I started out by saying, I think these are really, really good Connect Main projects. They've got $16.5 million. We'd be asking for 100,000 for both towns.
But how long has the grant app been out on the street?
Since the 12th of January.
Yeah,
So just
okay.
under a month.
that's when they opened it up, that round.
Question, Alan.
Mhm.
You have included in each your fees a telephone connection, which adds $20 or so
Mhm.
onto that. The question was asked, I don't know whether Randall got into a question whether you're going to eliminate that or modify that, because it is a penalty for those people that just have a cell phone. They're paying another, and why would somebody that has Spectrum that might be paying $20 less, why would they switch? I guess that's.
Yep, and that's part of actually what we're considering, and that's how we change our price structure if we're able to eliminate the phone requirement, because with that, we are the provider of last resort, and it's those FCC regulations, and as a phone company, we're responsible for that. But if we change that, and if we take that out, then we are not fulfilling our obligations. So you would lose, there's a funding piece that goes with that, but there are a lot of fees that go with that too. So if we can figure that out, and I think that's what Randall's talking about as part of this new pricing they're looking at, we're just not quite there right now. That's clearly the objective over the next period of time. I can't just say when exactly, but I know that it's moving, it's afoot. Okay.
Alan, would you address the strength of the grant application with both towns, or if one goes and the other doesn't?
I think both towns always make a stronger grant application. It's Connect Maine after all, that's in the name. that's in the
Connect
name.
Lincoln County.
That's right. That's right. No, it just does, because they do percentage on some pricing or scoring on regional pieces. So that clearly helps.
It makes a big
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
So Alan,
Yes.
it's Randall again, couple things. I don't want to make them feel pressured in going into this grant round. We don't have to. There'll be other rounds coming up in that new improve. We're in no hurry, that's for sure. We have plenty on our plate. And as far as the phone goes, we're always going to offer a phone and have an option for that. And then we'll probably offer another service that doesn't have the phone. That's the goal.
Right.
Since it's broken up into two towns costs, is the cost for each town contingent on both towns
Nope.
taking part in each full thing?
No, and that's kind of why I laid them out separately, just so everybody can see, here's what yours is, here's what yours is. I think we get efficiencies by doing them at the same time. It's efficient for the grant, it's just our administrative costs. It's a lot more efficient, obviously. But you're only responsible for, we're not, unless that's something the towns want to work out, that's.
But if one town was doing it versus another, would the administrative costs go up for that town? Would the other, because I'm assuming some of that stuff's kind of being split. And I mean, if there's a line going from Damariscotta to Newcastle and it's not in Damariscotta, how do you jump it, or you run the line, but you don't let anyone use it in Damariscotta? How does that work?
Yeah, it'd be, if they didn't pay for it, you would get it. We do that all the time. We have transmission fiber that runs all the way through town, that goes to other places that we're not selling it at all. It's for transmission. It's backbone. So we can do that. We can do that pretty easily.
I don't see any cost difference.
No, neither.
No.
Now, the multipliers we show in there are going to be the case regardless. Yeah.
Alan, could you talk to them about our success rate with Connect Main?
No.
No? Yes.
We haven't. So right now we're on our 18th grant. And we have two that are in place right now. One that we're doing a multi-year grant in Hope and Appleton, finishing them up. When that one's done, both towns will be 100% fiber to the home accessible, and we are funded to install over 1,000 new installs in both of those towns. So it's amazing. And then Bristol is the other one that we're working on right now. When we're done with that one, that town will be around 60% done, and we got another 257 paid installs there as well. So it's got a lot of new happy fiber customers there. So when those are done, we'll have completed 18. We've completed 16 on time and met all the requirements of the Connect Main Authority. So we're in really good shape with that. We've gotten good at it, for one thing, and we've been pretty successful at it too.
Question, it's kind of technical, I guess.
Sure.
Can you go back to a map?
Mhm.
Either Damariscotta or-
Almost made it out of here clean, didn't I? Which one?
Push it up. There you go.
Which one do you want?
I guess it doesn't matter, but see on this map here, where you have blue lines, right? Those are spectrum. And then you've got the green lines, right? That's the underserved or not served.
Yep.
So how do you serve that with fiber at the end of a spectrum line?
We build to it.
You build to it.
Like right
okay.
here,
Yeah.
right up there, those green lines there, we're gonna build our fiber. That's built into the cost. And when we did the pricing to reach those, how do we
Okay.
get to those? Yeah.
Milton Island Road is an example of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mary Ellen had a response
Hmm.
to the promise. or-
She was referring to the grant application. She wasn't seeing quickly the difference between contingent funds committed and solid funds
Oh,
committed. So that's something,
good,
something else to look at.
good. Yeah, we'll know more about that. So last thing, so we did phase one piece. I just want to show you kind of what we were thinking for a phase two. If we were able to do the phase one and you guys found the money and we could do it and everything worked, voters eventually approved it for the phase one part. Then we'd want to say, hey, let's talk about phase two. So we were looking at there's some planning that needs to be done for that. Really, and that really the next level. So that April through June period, doesn't have to be that, but a 3-month chunk of time where a kind of a dedicated task force of people from the select board and from the broadband committee and to a smaller group that work with us. And we work together to refine that cable overbuild plan, including identifying potential funding sources, really doing our work there, all those things that we can reduce the capital commitments on both the town and Tidewater. Once we've done that, then the next step is to say, okay, now we've kind of got this done. let's do a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, that we say, okay, here's how we're gonna, remember, these are big ticket items, 1.7 and 1.5, okay? How are we gonna do this? Okay, let's lay out this memorandum of understanding. And then from that, eventually you're gonna have to draft a contract. So the memorandum of understanding would probably go back to your authorizing bodies, the select boards and that kind of thing. Like, yes, we authorize the memorandum of understanding. And then it comes time to get the lawyers involved. Say, okay, great. We're going into a major project, 1.7, 1.5 million to finish this out. We've identified funding sources we want to go after. We identified what your percent's going to be, what our percent's going to be. Let's memorialize that in some contract that we sign, that we all agree on it, and then let's go do it. So that would be the next steps. And once that's done, then it is up to everybody for us to go after those funds, for the towns to do what they need to do. If they're funding part of it through their own funding, if it's a municipal bonds, if it's voter approved, that's part of the whole planning formula that would have to happen. That's not our side of it. We're the technical build side of it on the other side, but we're here to help you in any way with that part of it. And it's important for us to understand that and be a part of that process, I guess, is what we're saying. So that's kind of what I see as the next steps for that. It's complicated, but really manageable once you get your mind around what it is, what you're building, 1.5, 1.7 million. It's just that simple and just that big too. So, and then it's a matter of, yeah, how do we do that?
The other thing we can talk about is that the money doesn't have to come all at once, right? So I know in phase 2, you talked about it over years. We can do it in multiple contributions, and as we build it. And the same thing with a grant, I know whatever the amount the matching is, we don't have to pay that up front to do what we're doing. We use it as we build it. So I just want to make sure people understand that part.
Yeah. So that what he's saying is that commitment, if it was what we showed, whatever that was, $101,000 for, which one was that? Newcastle. Okay, you got to put up that amount. He's saying you may not have to write a check for 101,000 to start this grant. We're doing it by quarters. We're drawing down from Connect Main by quarters. We're putting in our money as we need to, that kind of thing. So that may be another, once again, a creative way to manage that process. I don't know. That's part of what we're not familiar enough with your budgetary cycles and those kind of things to manage that.
If you phase it over several years, you're going to start to be drawing revenue from the partially installed base. Can the town share in the benefits of that?
No. I was going to make a long answer. No, I'm kidding. That's a legitimate question. I'm not meaning to be facetious. That's clearly, but that's
an expected answer, of course.
Yeah, but that is, once again, those revenue, we want to get them hooked up as quick as possible because that return, our return on investment, that's how we make money. That's how our business operates. That's how every business operates. So, yeah. Sorry.
There was a reason it's separated out because Connect Main, the grant is to get those unserved or underserved, not for complete projects.
No, they can do complete projects too. I mean, because
So
they have
why not
some,
go in with
they have money for underserved as well, so that's a possibility. I think we looked at this when we made our response to the RFI and said, I'm not sure how ready we are to do this. You're ready to do the unserved Connect Main grant piece. If you have funding, if you have the match piece, I know that's the issue. But in terms of the data, the ability to do that, get that done, that's something that could be done in this round by March 20th, in terms of putting it all together. Now, whether we are ready to do that as a town, that's a different issue. So that's why we just kind of separated it out. I thought that'd be an easier way to kind of take a bite out of it. And it's in the unserved, that's the worst part. Anyhow.
So one of the fun jobs I get to do being on the select board is I get to look at every invoice that comes through and ask questions and look at how transparent everything is and make sure that it's clear and everything else like that. How does the billing work in this arrangement? So we'd be getting bills from Tidewater for our share of it. Like how does that break down? Do we see what work was done on what road and what that actually cost, or is it a much more sort of
Yeah.
less detail, bigger numbers?
No, we
Or
probably
more
do.
detail?
What we do to draw down money from Connect Main, then we have to actually do that. We have to be able to say, yep, we're ready to draw down this. And it's based on invoices, so it could be the same process. And we're typically doing that quarterly, but it depends on where we are with the project. So yeah, you could see the same kind of accounting, that we have that same kind of transparency the Connect Main has for us to get their funding for it as well. Yeah, that can be, I can speak for our accounting division. It'll be, they can do that part.
But I mean, working with towns, that must be something that commonly happens, just so that everyone knows what you're spending money on.
Yep.
So that people can answer
Yep.
questions.
And it's getting, and I gotta tell you, it's becoming more because more funds are involved now. I mean, that 16.5 million and federal funds are becoming involved. The reporting requirements are getting very, as you guess what, you got to report on a lot more. While that slows us down and it causes more administrative costs, which drives us crazy, it's a good thing though, too. And once we do that, you'll have access to that stuff. It's all public documents. You'll see it all. I think I'm done.
The inquisition is complete.
Put a stick of fork in me, I'm done. But, so that's what we wanted to present, and I thank you for letting us do that. And I know there's a lot of discussion both in the community level and also at select boards and broadband committees, all that stuff to really figure out what do you want to do and how do you do it. I think you're in a really good spot. You would be two great communities to work with. When we came into this year, we identified the two areas we wanted to work with, and your two communities were one that we definitely said we want to do a major project there. We have another one that we're working with too that's like that. So we kind of made on our chart on the wall, we put them all up there and picked out who we wanted. So these are ones that we would think would be good for us as a company and hopefully good for you.
So what's the latest we can tell you? We're in, we're out, this is the how much type of thing?
Pretty quickly.
To be able to get, to be able to get your thing done.
Right. I mean, it's something that needs to happen over the next few weeks, for sure. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to be, we're going to start putting I'm going to act as if we're doing some of this stuff, which means I'm going to be doing provider outreach. I'm going to be doing all that other stuff I've got to do, technical things I have to do, filling out some of the initial grant pieces. But yeah.
The caveat on the page says in red, this is not a formal bid. So does that mean you're gonna refine it or what?
It means, yeah, I think so. Once you're at that point where it's fine, we're ready to work with you, give us a formal, what's the actual formal price that we're gonna live with? Then we have to do that. Since this is just for discussion purposes at this point, we do that. Plus, put on any of our documents until it becomes an agreed upon public document.
So that happens after submission for the grant?
No, it would come, I think that red line would come off of there at the point that the community said, we've talked about it, we want to do this, we're willing to do, here's the percent we're gonna, you've had your next level of negotiation with us, I think. And they would say, great, here's the dollar amount we're all gonna figure out how to live with.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate the opportunity.
Very helpful.
Exciting. Need more than that.
Just kind of close it.
Well, people at home, that concludes the joint meeting tonight. Thank you for all attending, and we will have a copy of the meeting available shortly.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Simple stuff.